Chapter 5 introduces us to two different tenses than what we've had before. We're going to get the future and the imperfect tense. We've only really dealt with the present tense to this point, so this will be a little bit different, but ultimately it's pretty easy to form. And really this is focusing on first and second conjugation. There are some differences in the future tense depending on what conjugation a verb is. And we will cover those in over the next few chapters, what those differences are. But for right now, just remember first and second conjugation verbs. So these are verbs that have an ARE infinitive or an ERE, a long ERE infinitive. Okay, we're going to deal with the future and the imperfect tense. But to review, remember that Latin verbs or a Latin verb has four parts, and that when you conjugate, you need to get the stem for a verb. And you get the stem by taking the infinitive, which is the second part, and you get rid of the, we should all know this, RE. Okay, so second part minus the RE, and then you add your personal endings. To review the personal endings, we should know this chart at this point, but we have an O or M, S, T, mus, tis, and NT. And remember that these endings are what tell you what your subject is. We get a stem, but then we need to know what our subject is, and these endings are what tell you in Latin as opposed to the pronouns in English. So OM, ST, must, tis, NT, or most, must, isn't. Some of you know it that way. Okay, these are still going to be in play. Okay, we're still going to be using these in some capacity. We're just going to be tweaking it as we talk about the future and the imperfect tenses. So to form the future and the imperfect, it's pretty simple. You use the same exact stem. So we're still going to take our infinitive minus our RE and the same endings that we just had, OM, ST, must, tis, NT. But these tenses add what's called a tense sign in between them first. It's using the same stem and the same endings. There has to be a way to mark that we're talking about a different tense or when something's happening. Okay, so forming the imperfect, and you're going to translate this as was or were doing something, like I was loving, or used to, or kept. The idea here is that the imperfect, this perfect comes from Latin verb meaning to complete. And so imperfect means, essentially not complete. And it's a action in the past that's ongoing. Right? So it's not complete or ongoing, something like that. Okay? But a action in the past that's not completed, not finished, it's ongoing, it's continuous. Okay? To form it, you take the present stem, still, that infinitive minus the RE. And then you add the imperfect tense sign, which is a BA. Okay? And then you add your personal endings to those. So here we'd have a BA for all of these, for all of our endings, okay? And then you're just adding your personal endings. So if I wanted to say that I was doing something, it's still an M, or an O or an M. It's an M, it's always M. You were doing something, S. He, she, or it was. We were. Vamos. Batis. And bond. Bom, bos, bot, bomus, batis, bond. Okay. Now you can think of it, if you're comfortable with the same personal endings with this tense sign idea, right? If you want to keep this step, that's fine. A lot of times what I did was scrap both of these, and I just thought of this as my imperfect endings. I didn't think of this tense sign thing. This is really the technical piece, is the way to do it is tense sign plus ending still. But you can also think of it as just, you have an imperfect set of endings. There you go. This is what it is. Bom, bos, bot. Bom is bot is bond. Whichever one works for you, I am fine with. Okay? But you do need to know these endings. They show up a lot in Latin. We're going to use them a ton. Okay, this is the imperfect tense, again, for a action in the past that's not completed. So was or were or used to or kept doing something. That's what you're going to use here. Moving on to the future, okay? Future tense, something that's going to happen later on in time. Always in English, we're going to translate this as will verb. Will love, will see, will hunt, something like that. Still the same present stem, so the infinitive minus the RE. And then we're going to add our future tense sign, which is a BI, and there's a few slight variations to that. But then all you do is you add the same exact personal endings that we did. Personal, there we go. Endings that we added with the imperfect or with our present tense verbs. Okay, and here's where we have our variations. It's bow instead of like BIM. And then it's bis, bit, bimus. So far, only first person singular is weird. Bitis. And then here, bunt. For some reason, bint didn't sound good to the Romans, and they gave us bunt. Again, you can think of it as this tense sign idea, right? A tense sign plus personal endings, or scrap it and just think of this as your future tense endings for first and second conjugation. These are going to be different, okay, first and second conjugation. These ones will be different than what we're going to get with third and fourth. Third and fourth form their futures differently. Don't worry about that right now, okay, but for right now, just make sure that you make a note that this is only for first and second conjugation. The last thing to deal with is, oh, wrong thing. The last thing to deal with here in the notes is the idea of adjectives that end in er. Okay, and we've seen adjectives that end osa already. Osa examples being like bonus or malus Remember that every time that you're given this stuff, you're given, the us is the masculine, the feminine, and the neuter. Masculine, feminine, neuter. Those are the things that you're given every single time. The nominative singular for those. Well, there's also adjectives that end in er, it's the same things. Remember your second masculine chart has either a us or an er, and then feminine and neuter. So it's the same exact process. Okay, for the stem of these, and this is kind of like the important piece for this. So make sure like you know this here, right? So for their stems, some of these adjectives will keep the er, and some will actually drop the e out. So we have two examples here. If you look like liber, libera, it keeps the e. Noster, nostra does not. Then as you see for the stem, here we have noster, nostra, nostrum, nostra. If you got rid of the a, and then if we look here even, it goes noster, nostri. Okay, this second one is what's going to give you your stem to use for all the other forms except the masculine nominative singular.